The dodo. Have you ever wondered how the dodo bird was erased forever and suffered one of the most tragic extinctions in recorded history? It all started millions of years ago when a group of ancient pigeons accidentally landed on a remote island in the Indian Ocean called Mauritius. With no predators, abundant fruit, and no reason to fear anything, life was effortless. Over thousands of generations, their bodies adapted to paradise. Wings shrank, bodies grew heavier, and their brains simply forgot how to feel fear. The dodo was born. But paradise was about to be shattered. When Dutch sailors arrived on Mauritius in the late 1600s, they were met by birds that walked straight toward them, completely unafraid. That curiosity was a death sentence. Sailors hunted them freely for meat. The ships that followed carried rats, pigs, and dogs that raided nests, devoured eggs, and decimated whatever remained of the population. The forests were stripped, the food supply collapsed, and a species that had thrived for millions of years unraveled in decades. By 1662, the dodo was spotted for the last time, gone forever for the crime of being too trusting. Western Black Rhinoceros. At the beginning of the 20th century, an estimated 1 million black rhinoceroses from 4 subspecies roamed the savannas of Africa. The western subspecies was among the most numerous. Then came the hunters. Widespread sports hunting in the first decades of the century quickly decimated their numbers. Conservation efforts in the 1930s briefly slowed the decline, but the demand for rhino horn, falsely believed in traditional Chinese medicine to cure ailments, drove poaching to catastrophic levels. By 1980, the population was in the hundreds. By 2000, only an estimated 10 Western black rhinos survived. A WWF recovery plan was drawn up in 1999, but without government commitment, it was never carried out. The last sighting was reported in 2006 in Cameroon's northern province, and in 2011 it became the first rhinoceros subspecies declared extinct in modern times. Greed, indifference, and a superstition with no scientific basis erased a species that had walked the earth for millions of years. Caribbean monk seal. The first historical mention of the Caribbean monk seal is recorded in the account of the second voyage of Christopher Columbus. He called it the sea wolf. It was, in fact, the only subtropical seal native to the Caribbean Sea and Gulf of Mexico, and that distinction made it a target. The most visible factor in its demise was the relentless hunting of the 18th and 19th centuries, with hunters slaughtering the seals by the hundreds for the oil within their blubber. Their docile nature and complete lack of flight instinct in the presence of humans made them very easy to kill. Commercial overfishing then destroyed their food supply, starving whatever populations remained. By the time it was placed on the endangered species list in 1967, it was likely already extinct. The last confirmed sighting was in 1952. Conservation Society, and after a 5-year government survey, extinction was officially declared in 2008. The first seal in history to be wiped out entirely by human hands. Tasmanian tiger. Also known as the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger was one of nature's most extraordinary experiments, a large carnivorous marsupial that looked unmistakably like a striped wolf. For thousands of years, it was Australia's apex predator before competition with dingoes and humans drove it off the mainland. It survived in Tasmania until European settlers arrived and declared it a pest and a threat to livestock. Bounty programs were introduced and hunters were paid per carcass. Thousands were killed. By 1930, the species was extinct in the wild, wiped out by institutional slaughter. The last known thylacine died in Hobart Zoo on September 7, 1936, alone in a concrete enclosure with no attempt ever made to breed the species in captivity. What makes this extinction uniquely painful is the timing. It happened well within living memory, in a period of scientific awareness, when the decision to let it die was a conscious one. There have been thousands of unconfirmed sightings since, but none verified. Great Auk. For millions of years, the North Atlantic was home to one of the most remarkable seabirds ever to exist. The Great Auk occupied coastal waters stretching from the northeastern United States to northern Spain. A large, flightless bird that resembled a penguin, perfectly adapted to the open ocean. Being plump, slow on land, and nesting on commonly navigated islands made it an irresistible food source for sailors and Native American coastal cultures alike. Hunted for its meat, its eggs, and its thick, downy feathers, prized for mattress stuffing, the auk's reproduction rate could not keep pace with the slaughter. As populations collapsed in the early 19th century, naturalists scrambled to preserve specimens for museums and private collectors. The cruelest irony is that this scientific interest accelerated the end. The last confirmed pair was killed in 1844 by collectors sent specifically to obtain specimens for a museum. It was declared extinct in 1852. Victorian science unwittingly delivered the final blow. Atlas bear. The Atlas bear was Africa's only native bear, a large, dark-furred, formidable carnivore that inhabited the forests of the Atlas Mountains across Morocco, Algeria, and Libya. Its downfall began long before the modern era. The Roman Empire hunted them by the thousands, shipping them across the Mediterranean to be used in gladiatorial arenas for spectacle and slaughter. Following the fall of Rome, the bear's troubles did not end. The spread of firearms made them easy targets for hunters, and as their populations fragmented, they became rare and sought-after curiosities. Wealthy collectors paid handsomely for live specimens destined for private zoos and traveling fairs, further draining what little was left of the population. Driven into ever smaller pockets of mountain terrain, stripped of numbers by centuries of exploitation, the Atlas bear had nowhere left to go. The last confirmed individual was killed in 1870. No conservation effort was ever mounted on its behalf. Steller's sea cow. Discovered in 1741 by German zoologist Georg Wilhelm Steller near the Commander Islands in the North Pacific, the Steller's sea cow was the largest member of the Sirenian family in recorded history, stretching up to 9 meters long and weighing as much as 10 tons. It was slow, surfaced regularly to breathe, and carried so much blubber it could not dive. In short, it was defenseless. European sailors quickly recognized its value. Its meat was palatable, its fat could be rendered for oil and used to waterproof boats, and its thick hide was practically armor. Indigenous peoples had already hunted the sea cow for centuries, meaning only a single small population remained around the Commander Islands by the time Steller documented it. The slaughter that followed was swift and total. Other species of marine mammals that have gone extinct in modern times include the Steller's sea cow, last recorded in 1768, presumably due to overhunting. Science Daily. Within just 27 years of European discovery, the species was entirely destroyed. Javan tiger. 3 tiger subspecies vanished within the last 80 years. The Javan tiger is among them. Formerly widespread across Java, the most densely populated island in Indonesia, the tiger entered the 20th century in relative abundance. Then came the people. A population explosion on the island drove rapid deforestation. Almost a quarter of Java was forested in the 1930s, that by the mid-1970s that figure had collapsed to less than 10%. As the forests disappeared, so did the deer and wild pigs the tiger depended on. Starvation shrank the population. Mass killings by hunters and military units finished the job. By 1980, only a handful of individuals survived in the most remote parts of the island. There were no serious captive breeding programs, no coordinated conservation response, just a slow, documented collapse that the world watched and did nothing about. The last known Javan tiger was killed in 1984. Today, it exists only in old photographs and museum specimens.